Looks like we are now joined by Illinois head coach John Groce. The Illini are 12-7 in overall and 2-4 in Big Ten play. Illinois will host Purdue on Wednesday before traveling to Minnesota on Saturday. Coach Groce, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Please start us out with a brief opening statement, and we'll go ahead and go straight to questions for you.
Sure. Two completely different weeks between last week's conference call and this one. I thought that we took steps and strides in the right direction defensively in our home game against Maryland and our road game against Nebraska. I thought our defense is what stood out, and was hoping that we could obviously start to turn the corner there at that end. And then I took a step back defensively this past week in the game at Northwestern and in the home game yesterday against Indiana. I thought our defense was atrocious and has to get better. This past week, offensively, I thought we made a lot of strides, maybe as good as we've played offensively in two back-to-back Big Ten games in the 3-year window that we've been here, so that part was encouraging. I also thought individual players have really started to grasp things and improve, and we're starting to see guys play their role at higher levels. I thought that was very encouraging as well. But again, and I've said this over and over, in this league, if you're going to try to outscore people every night through the 18 games, you're greatly mistaken. You have to play defense at a certain level in this league if you're going to have any type of consistency. And obviously, in the last two games, we failed to do that and did not get the job done on that end of the floor. Fortunately for us, it was a split for the week, and now we head into this week and have obviously Purdue on Wednesday night here at home and Minnesota on the road Saturday. Questions?
Coach, you talked a little bit about the importance of having a team effort and the temporary loss of Devontae Rush in your life. Talk a little bit more about the significance of Kendrick Nunn in that effort.
Well, Kendrick's played his role well. I think he has actually defended better in addition to the offensive production that people see on a stat sheet. So he's really coming on. He's one of those players I mentioned earlier with my initial comments there that I think is really improving. I'm excited about that for him. He basically had no off season with the injury and coming back from the knee, and I think he's starting to hit his stride a little bit, and obviously that's a good thing for us.
Your next question comes from the line of Marcus Jackson with Champaign News-Gazette.
Morning, John.
Good morning.
When you talk about the defense struggling, is it a mindset on the part of the players? Is it a scheme thing? Is it something that you can put your finger on to kind of figure that out?
Well, the first thing and foremost is we got to play harder defensively. It's got to be more important to guys individually and to our team collectively. As are more important than making shots, and that's the first thing. And then the second thing, we got to make fewer mistakes. Our execution of transition defense yesterday, our execution of pick and roll defense in Wednesday night's Northwestern game late just wasn't good enough. We've got to execute those things better, but it really starts with the right mindset, and it starts with more effort and working harder on that end.
Your next question comes from the line of Nathan Baird with Lafayette Journal and Courier.
Good morning, John. Just wanted to touch base with you on that and where you feel like he is compared to a year ago, and how that fits into the matchup with a team like Purdue that's going to put two 7-footers on the floor.
Well, I think he's improved. Obviously he's coming off of, he didn't play very well yesterday. But, he's improved for sure. He's gained weight. He's gotten stronger. He's even more vocal. He's done a great job with his leadership. He's accountable defensively. He really impacts the game on that end. He's improved around the basket. With post moves and different things that he and Coach Ford have worked on. He's been a work in progress with that over the 3 years. So he's improved in a lot of different areas.
Your next question comes from the line of Rob McCullough with the Illini Report.
John, does it make it harder to learn defense if the guys have to learn how to do a 2-3 zone as well as a pack line? Is that for freshmen and younger?
It's a great question, Rob, because I think at some point, less is more probably at some point. There's different ways to play defense. For example, Indiana, who we played yesterday, plays several different defenses. We play a handful, obviously primarily man, and we've sprinkled in some zone. I do think whenever you rob Peter, you have to pay Paul. I mean, that's probably the best way I can answer that. Do I think that we can be good at both? I do, but I think sometimes it takes more time when you're working several different defenses. If you want to master one, it's probably easier than trying to master 2 or 3 or 4. I know I'm stating the obvious here. Probably true in terms of the law of learning, regardless of whether it's basketball or life or business as well. But at the end of the day, I think we've played both of them effectively. I would like to see some more consistency with both of them.
How specifically with LeRon and maybe being on the floor at the same time as Malcolm, how does that affect his progression?
I don't think it necessarily does. Yesterday, obviously, Indiana was small. At times they play Troy Williams at the 5, so they're playing 5 guards, which is unique. And so we played that lineup a little bit yesterday. But, regardless of who he plays with, whether it's with Malcolm or with Nana or with Mav or, I really like his growth and development. He's getting better. He made a few mistakes yesterday, but he's making less of them per minute played. And his progression right now reminds me a little bit of Nunn and Hill's progression last year, about midstream of conference play, where they started to really get it. And you can see him starting the light bulb going off on several different things, whether it's offensively or defensively or scouting or terminology. It's starting to click a little bit for him. And when that happens, and I knew when it would happen that he'd be able to impact our team, because he's very, very talented. It was only a matter of time.
Coach, we appreciate your time this morning. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next coach on the teleconference is Purdue's Matt Painter. The Boilermakers are 11-7 overall and 3-2 in the Big Ten. Purdue will travel to Illinois on Wednesday before hosting Iowa on Saturday. Coach Painter, thanks for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning.
Please provide some opening comments, and then we'll open the call for questions.
We had just one game the past week, and we're very fortunate to be able to pull out a victory. Took a 3 by Kendall Stevens at the end of regulation to put it into overtime, and just felt that, especially in the first half, we had too many breakdowns and turned the basketball over way too much, and we're careless with the ball. We were very, very fortunate to win the game with 16 turnovers. It's something I keep harping on with our team, and we just have to do a better job of taking care of the basketball. And with all that being said, and got to give our guys some credit for being resilient and hanging in there, and we didn't knock down some free throws, and we had a crucial turnover late in the regulation, but yet we're able to kind of find our way and get an offensive rebound on a free throw, and Kendall Stevens made a huge shot. Then we played great in overtime, and so I was proud of our guys for hanging in there and being able to pull out a tough one. But we have to do a better job, of taking care of the basketball. There's just no way you're going to win in the Big Ten consistently with that many turnovers.
Thank you, Coach. Let's go straight to questions, please, Darla.
Your first question comes from the line of Nathan Baird with Lafayette Journal and Courier.
Good morning, Matt. How's it going?
Good. Good morning.
Want to get, after you've had a chance to look over things, your impressions of the job that Dakota did on Saturday, especially considering the foul trouble that Rayfeld came in and maybe him having to play some longer minutes because of that. It seemed like he was one of his better games in recent weeks.
Well, I thought just, him having 4 assists and no turnovers, an area where we really struggled. And if you can just come in the game and be solid as a guard and not turn the basketball over, you're really going to help us, especially if you're getting the ball where it needs to be in our offensive scheme. So that's probably number one thing for him, just, being solid, taking what the defense gives him, knowing, the scouting report and what he's supposed to do defensively. But no, I thought he did a good job.
There was one pass in particular where he made like that left-hand thing, reaching around, getting it to AJ. I mean, we haven't necessarily seen a lot of the necessarily dazzling passes from him that you guys talked about in practice as far as in games, but that seemed to be an indication of some of what you guys have talked about this season with him.
Yeah, he has really good vision, and the more he can play and the more success he can have, the more comfortable he'll feel out there. And he's not in a position where he's going to play through his mistakes. It's just that's part of coming off the bench. A lot of times guys want that. Well, you got to become a really consistent and productive player, and be that guy who starts and plays 30 to 35 minutes a game, and then you're able to play through some mistakes. But guys get that way and get in that position by being productive and not making mistakes. I think that's sometimes difficult for young guys to understand.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Your next question comes from the line of Brian Newbert with Golden Black Illustrated.
Hey, Matt, how are you?
Good, Noob.
Good. The past two games, the turnovers from earlier in the season have kind of come back to haunt you a little bit. What do you chalk that up to? I mean, is there kind of a common denominator to it all? Is it a concentration issue, or is there anything that is there anything more to it?
Well, I think it starts with our post play. Hammonds has 7 turnovers, and almost all of them are him just not making a fundamental play and just being simple and basic with what he's doing. Each one has different particulars around it because of the way they defend and the defense, and it's situational. But you have to make simple plays, and so I think that's where it starts for us is either feeding the post or the decisions after we get the ball in the post, and that's you have to be accountable. If you're gonna get the basketball inside, the guy feeding it has got to do a good job of delivering it. Then that guy's got to do a good job of making a decision whether to pass, shoot, or dribble at that time.
Thank you.
Coach, you got 6 players in your lineup that are averaging 8.5 points per game at least. How would you assess the depth of your rotation after a handful of Big Ten games now?
Well, we've had to shrink our rotation. I think that's really helped us from a defensive standpoint. We have a very balanced scoring if you look at us from in our stats. So we definitely try to get the ball off the glass, push the basketball when we have opportunities, but play through our post guys and then play through Kendall Stevens, his ability to shoot and stretch the defense. We can put a more skilled team out there, but that hasn't been a very good defensive team. So we got to get better defensively, and then we have to be a better offensive team in terms of execution and taking care of the basketball. And I think we could really make some strides if we make those improvements and even help that rotation.
Your next question comes from the line of Nathan Baer with Lafayette Journal and Courier.
Hey, Matt, I had another one. Just you mentioned at times this year that you've had games where you played well at the start and then played worse later, and vice versa. And then recently here in these Big Ten games, you've had to come back from these first half deficits, 8, 9, 10 points. Have you seen any common thread in those games where you've been down by that much here in the conference? Anything that's been missing or things that you need to do, the team needs to do better, specifically that's causing those deficits?
Yeah, I would say the turnovers. I know I keep harping on it, but that's if you look at the first half of the Maryland and the Penn State game, we have 9 turnovers in both those first halves. And I don't remember the total against Minnesota. I knew I felt good about the shots we were getting in both games. I don't think our shots were terrible. In the Penn State game, we just turned the basketball over too much. So even though we had 7 turnovers in both of those halves in Maryland and Penn State, I thought we did a better job in the Penn State game of just finishing plays. We're getting the ball in good scoring opportunities, then not making those shots or making good decisions. So we got to continue to do what we're doing, but then just execute better and finish better.
Thanks.
Your next question comes from the line of Rob McCauley with the Illini Report.
Hey, Matt, if you go big, you have 2 7-footers, and then John counters that by going small, what kind of danger does that present to you in terms of quickness?
Well, we haven't played the 2 big guys together this year.
And
So
there's no danger of that happening tomorrow?
I didn't say that. I just said we haven't done it this year so far.
Okay.
So I can't really comment on something that we haven't done, and to this point. And I'm trying to play one of them at a time right now, and so if we can get that, but they're going to play small no matter what, especially after the last game. I thought LeBron Black did some really good things for him. I thought he gave them a boost, and his athleticism and his ability to drive the ball a little bit, causes those fives some tough matchups across the board. Sure, our guys can post them up at the other end, but you also have team defense and guys can help, and so do we on the flip of it. But Illinois does a good job with their speed and their skill of stretching you out. What's difficult is they're very streaky, with Hill and Nunn and Cosby and Jalen Tate and the point guard, the transfer from Oregon State who had the great game in the last game from Whitney Young. He's explosive. He's a kid that can put 20 on the board, and so they have so many guys in that mix. But then who scores 20? Malcolm Hill's great, against Maryland, and then Cosby's great against Northwestern, and then Nunn's been great, the past two games. And so when you look at them, then obviously I mentioned the lead guard. I don't know why his name's escaping me, but who do you put your main defensive guys on? They have some really talented and explosive scorers. Now when they go really small and they use that athleticism, and Nana can move, so Nana can switch ball screens and do some different things, and LeBron Black gives them a lot of versatility. So they're tough to go against. They really are.
Thanks.
No problem.
Coach, we appreciate your time this morning. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. The next coach on the teleconference is Penn State's Patrick Chambers. The Nittany Lions are 12-6.